You're listening to Vedge Your Best, the plant-based podcast with your host, vegan life coach, Michele Olander, a conversation with Elspeth Feldman from the SpeedyVegan.com. Welcome back, Vedge Heads, Vedge Your Besties. Today we have a conversation with whole food, plant-based writer, teacher, creator, and yes, influencer, Elspeth Feldman from the SpeedyVegan.com. Elspeth and I have in some ways had a similar path on our quote-unquote vegan journeys. But what she has created over the past few years at the Speedy Vegan is 100% her own inimitable style of active beauty, abundance, health-fortifying foods, and a website and social media platforms that are teeming with color and deliciousness. In this conversation, we will discuss what brought Elspeth to veganism, what shifts in her thinking occurred along the way, what it's meant for her family, how it's encouraged her to expand her own self-concept beyond her comfort zone, and how she created an entirely new public space for herself in midlife. All the things that we talk about here on Vedge Your Best, where I encourage you, every single one of you, every week, to eat more plants, yes, but also to take on an impossible goal. All the links that Elspeth mentions in the show will be in the show notes, so you can just listen now and find out more about Elspeth Feldman, the SpeedyVegan.com, and all her news at the end. Elspeth Feldman, welcome to Vedge Your Best. Thank you for joining me here.
Thanks, Michele. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real honor to be here. I have loved listening to your podcast. I always feel like you have this wise, warm voice that I just need to tune into. Sometimes I'm not really listening to what you're saying, but just the tone of your voice calms me. And I love your podcast. And I have learned so much from you. And I try to put all your little tips and tricks into action in my daily life too.
That's very kind. Flattery will get you absolutely everywhere on this podcast. Thank you. I love that. Elspeth is someone I have for my audience. Elspeth is someone I have been kind of parallel with in the kind of vegan social media and websites. And we both follow Howard Jacobson, who's one of our faves, who's got a wonderful podcast and a wonderful plant-based vegan teacher. And so we've kind of been on parallel orbits for a while. And I'm really pleased to be able to feature you here on the podcast and introduce you to my listeners. So thank you. Elspeth is from Zimbabwe, and I think it's very interesting that you grew up on a dairy farm, Elspeth.
I did, yes. I was born and raised on a dairy farm in Chipinga, which is a little farming district on the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe, right along the Mozambique border. And my parents were farmers. We had a big herd of dairy cows and grew crops to feed the dairy as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting for me because we also, in parallel, came to vegan, plant-based lifestyle and eating in post-middle age, less, not right away. It didn't come to us immediately. And also, if I understand your story well, you also were inspired by a child who wanted to move towards vegetarianism, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, well, as a child myself, growing up on the dairy farm, I loved all the animals and bonded with the calves. And my sister and I used to go and feed the newborn calves, bottles of milk because the calves were taken away from their mother. We didn't make that connection. I also remember going with my father to the abattoir to take the male calves because we didn't keep the male calves. And my sister and I would beg and beg and beg our dad just to keep this one calf each time we would go there, and we'd be crying. But I don't know. So I guess, we were raised on a farm, and that's the way that you do things on a farm. I mean, I think it broke my father's heart as well that we had to do it. But somehow that connection disappeared as I grew into a teenager and young adult. And then thankfully I tuned back into it. And once you tune back into it, you can't tune it out.
I find that's true too. I find that's true. And I think we sometimes forget at our peril how normalization, how our culture makes us blind to certain things, in sometimes maybe for good reasons, sometimes for very probably reasons that got us through millennia of evolution and worked for us for many, many, many generations. But it also makes us a little bit slower to make some of these connections that we've at some point trimmed out of our synapses, making that connection between where food comes from and what's involved in it.
Yeah, that's so true. It really does. I mean, it's a good way to say it. We sort of trimmed it out of our synapses. My journey as to veganism really sort of started in about 2011. My son, who was 15 at the time, we were on vacation in France, of all places, one of your favorite places, actually. And I was out to dinner with him alone, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to stop eating animals." And I was like, "Okay, sounds fun to me." Didn't really think much of it. And he said, "No, I'm going to become vegetarian." And I thought, okay, that's okay. He's 15 years old. It's probably going to last a week or so. Not a big deal. And of course, as a mother, I was, concerned about where he was getting his protein. And he was an athlete and played a lot of sports. And I just couldn't imagine that this was going to last long. And a year later, he was still vegan, well, vegetarian, really, because he did still have some dairy. He definitely had some dairy. And occasionally I could get him to have some smoked salmon. That was something I could sneak in occasionally. So pescatarian is what he called himself. And he was just doing it because he just felt like it wasn't right. He didn't have, we didn't really discuss his reasons that much. He just felt like it didn't feel good to eat meat, really. So after a year, I sat him down. I said, "Okay, the experiment's been good. Now it's time to start eating chicken or beef or something. You have to start eating all this. You just cannot survive like this. This is just wrong." There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. I mean, he was captain of the soccer team and playing lacrosse and basketball and super active and healthy kid. But my brain decided that he needed to have protein because that's what I had learned. And how could he possibly survive? So he refused. And I thought, well, I literally sat him at the table with some chicken. I said, "You have to eat this." And he turned green and purple and was like, I'm just not doing it. So I thought, okay, let me re-examine this. And luckily, Forks Over Knives had come out around that time. It'll be a few months later. So this was in that was 2010 when he decided to go vegetarian. It was 2011, a whole year later, when I had seen Forks Over Knives. My husband and I sat down and we watched Forks Over Knives together and sort of looked at each other and said, "He's onto something, let's give this, whole thing a try." But we didn't go the whole vegan route. We thought, okay, well, we'll be vegetarians at least for a month and just try, 28 days. What harm in that? And so we started on that journey. But of course, we had to start the day after my husband's birthday because we couldn't possibly go out and celebrate his birthday without having some animal products. So we started October 3rd of 2011. And luckily, as soon as I learned something new, I dive in deep. And there were a couple of YouTube videos out there, not much. There was a few things on the internet. And I did just stumble on Gary Yourofsky's The Best Speech You'll Ever Hear, or The Greatest Speech You'll Ever Hear. I'm not sure exactly what it's called. And I watched that, and it really rattled me. I was like, oh my goodness, I just can't believe that I didn't make this animal connection. Like, I love animals. I just absolutely love animals. And I couldn't believe that I had, the scales sort of fell off my eyes. And I was like, well, vegetarian doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to be vegetarian. I'm going to be vegan. And so from that moment on, started trimming out everything that I could. I didn't, I'm a people pleaser. So I definitely, when I ate at other people's houses or went out to restaurants, if there was butter or, eggs or something in the dish, I didn't make a big stink about it. But I slowly found my voice, but I definitely didn't eat any more meat or anything. But I slowly sort of found my voice and realized that no is a complete sentence. And I could just say no, and I didn't want to eat that. So that took a little while. My husband hung on to a few, he kept eating eggs for a while and for a few years. And then, he read Rich Roll's book and thought, okay, I can do this too. And so he slowly came along in his own timing. And, my son, of course, became vegan along with us. And my daughter came home from college from Thanksgiving that year and was like, what? No turkey? And then she jumped right in. So it's been really nice. The whole family started eating this way together and has continued.
Well, bravo to you. I don't have that same exact family support. I am a leader in the family on it, but it has not been as I haven't had such a complete conversion rate in my in my family yet. But we are moving in that direction, and I think that's wonderful. You bring up some things that remind me of my journey and what I always say. There are some people who immediately have some sort of epiphany and go vegan automatically, just overnight. That is not most people that I talk to. That's not most people's journey. It's also, I think, often one that gets pushed aside quickly. Kind of, what is it, like fast money, go fast? It's like fast conversions sometimes disappear quickly. And I think that it's, some of us will say, oh, well, it's hard for me. Yeah, it can be hard. That doesn't mean it won't work. Because it's a journey, because it's a process, doesn't mean we should go, oh, it's not really, I'm not cut out for it. My family's not suited for it. We can take some comfort in the idea that it sometimes does take a methodical journey. And sometimes there are some things that get in the way for a little while. And that doesn't mean it didn't work.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really encourage, friends and viewers to just make some changes. 50% of your meals are vegan. Bravo. I mean, just make some kind of a change. It's good for you, good for the planet, good for the animals. So there's only good things to come out of it. So
I agree. I think some people have a very kind of, and I think also some of us even hide behind the idea of all or nothing. If I can't imagine doing it all, then I don't even have to start. I don't even have to try. So I think that's a wonderful thing. And you and I also have, we both went through the plant-based nutrition certification at eCornell.
eCornell, yes. Yeah, that was great. And I did that, I think maybe like 2013 or something around there, but I kind of wish I'd waited a few more years because I think there are a lot of lessons that I learned along the way. And then I might have gotten more out of it and it might have solidified more if I'd waited a few more years to do it, or I'd love to redo it. It was really good, but it was a lot of information, early on for me that I really enjoyed the information I got. I love the camaraderie of all the different people and hearing other people's opinions, but I would have liked to have waited on that a little bit before I jumped in.
That's interesting. I did it in 2018, I believe it was. I might have finished in 2019. I might have done it over the winter. Yeah. And so, and for me, I had a long process also, and it was also inspired by my teenager who I was also I've said this on the podcast before, I was also in Paris with her. And I said, you have to eat something. You have to eat eggs or fish or chicken. And at the time, and I really kind of came down on her. I said, you have to, because I felt like I was doing the wrong thing as a mother at the time. So
I know that exact feeling I was going to lose my mother card if I didn't.
Yeah.
If I didn't do this right. So, yeah.
So true. Yeah. Yeah. I felt like I was only being responsible. And also the documentaries, another one of the things that have really helped a lot of people re-examine their thoughts and re-examine the assumptions that they have about food and health and where our food comes from. So Forks Over Knives, so many of us have been inspired by those, that category of documentary. So listeners, if any of these things you haven't done, look into them. Get yourself a teenager that wants to move into veganism. It helps.
It definitely does. Yeah. And if Forks Over Knives doesn't ring the bell for you, there's plenty of others. Game Changers has been very popular with the men, especially.
The Rich Roll podcast for men.
Rich Roll, yeah, Rich Roll's podcast has been, tremendous for a lot of men that I know. And his book was, as I say, it was a real catalyst for my husband. My husband's, he lost about, he was never really heavy, but he honestly, since he became vegan, he lost about 20 to 25 pounds. And his energy just went through the roof. He's always exercised, but he has so much energy. He's late 60s and he bikes every day, indoors or outdoors. He does about 10,000 miles a year on his bicycle. And he runs 8-minute miles. And I mean, he's just so full of energy, and just before he went vegan, it took him a while to get out of bed. He was achy, he was sore, he didn't feel that good, and his digestive system was out of whack. But he's just like a machine. It's just so inspiring to watch. His motto is just never stop, and he literally never stops. He's really I would never would have known that it was going to have such an effect on him. And I feel like he became, even more spiritual. And his, I've always done yoga. And I remember, a few years after he became vegan, we were walking on the beach and he was like, why don't you show me that yoga stuff? And I was like, okay. I did a few sun salutations with him and he was like, okay. And then he's a real A-type. And then the next day we were walking on the beach again and he said, well, can we do that yoga stuff again? And I was like, okay. And then honestly, we started doing yoga together every single day for about 4 years straight after that. We had this little routine that we did every morning together. And I was like, I never would have known, like, who would have guessed that, he would tap into more of his sort of spiritual side as well. So it was a big change for him, but it's been fun for the whole family, as I say.
That's wonderful. And we don't have to talk about him when he's not here behind his back, but he's not in his 30s. He's a little older, and he has if you go on to Elspeth's website, thespeedyvegan.com, you get to see some photographs of the family. They are very, very attractive bunch of people.
You're so funny, Michele. Yeah, probably the Instagram's probably the place to go.
Is that right?
More of the sort of pictures there, but yeah, no, he's definitely inspiring. So that's great. And I mean, my siblings, I grew up in Zimbabwe on this farm with 3 siblings, and they all live in France. Lucky them. Lucky me, I get to visit them. And they all live in the south of France, but they did not embrace this lifestyle and have had a different health issues that have gone along with it. Our father, very sadly, dropped dead of a heart attack when I was 9 years old. He was only 47 at the time. So he had a widowmaker heart attack. And he was, we thought he was super fit and healthy. He was always, lifting weights and playing tennis. And he actually died playing squash. But he was under a lot of stress with farming. There was a war situation going on at the time between Rhodesia, as it was back then, and so there was a lot of stress. But he also ate a lot of dairy and meat, and we had Jersey cows, which had a very high butter fat, and there was a long history of heart disease in his family too. So that is a gene that's been passed down to all of us. I have the high Lp(a) gene, which is supposed to, keep your cholesterol fairly high. My cholesterol is really great, well below 200, usually, in the 150 range, but a little higher just lately as I get older. So I have to keep on it. I can't let up. But anyway, so my father died at a very young age. So it's always been, in the front of mind that we have this gene, we got to be careful. My 2 brothers had to go through bypass surgery a couple of years ago. My one brother has started this year, 2022, as a vegan. I'm super proud of him. He's been going, he calls it plant-based, whole food plant-based. And that's, tremendous. And as you know, in France, it's not always as easy, but he loves to cook. So he's doing that. My other brother made a bunch of changes, but I would love to see more changes being made, but you can only go so far with, people have to find their own way. So,
Absolutely. That's so true.
yeah.
So that's very encouraging to see. Even sometimes when people have very important reasons to rethink the way they've been eating, they don't. So
Right.
this is really
It's hard.
wonderful.
It is hard. I mean, it's very hard to make change. And, I think it's even sometimes harder now, if you're wanting to be a whole food, plant-based vegan, eat real healthy, because there's a lot of vegan options out there that aren't necessarily healthful. I mean, I applaud them because I think it really does help people transition. And I'm really interested in getting people to stop eating animals and animal products and things. So if they need to have these products, that's fantastic. But I think if you're doing it for health reasons and stuff, I think it can be a little bit harder because there is so much good, delicious vegan, can I say junk food out there? So it's an interesting time to be a vegan. But first and foremost, I'm just happy that people are not eating animals.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And if it's a transition, we don't want to transition people just to unhealthy foods, but whatever you need to get you through, because I feel like it's as you know, if you listen to my podcast, I'm all about the brain. I'm not so much about the food, because the food is easier when your brain changes. And sometimes that's why gradual works, is you start to say, oh, well, I'm not really deprived. I'm not
Right.
really losing out. I'm not really unable to enjoy my family and friends and my culture and my traditions. I just need to rethink it a little bit, and then I can still have what we need. But the food is still a process for people, and I don't get involved with it so much because there are people like you doing such beautiful teaching such beautiful things, creating such beautiful foods, and on social media and through your website, teaching people how to eat in a really attractive, beautiful, healthful way. So I'd love you to tell me about the genesis of speedyvegan.com and what the name means to you and what you offer there.
Well, I'll just correct you there. It's the Speedy Vegan, or
The Speedy. Sorry.
Speedy. Yeah. Well, I've always loved to cook. I mean, I grew up, on the farm at my mother's apron strings, and she was a really good cook. Obviously, not cooking vegan. Everything was full of butter, and we made ice cream and churned the butter that was, from the cows on the farm. But I learned to cook through her, and I guess I've always been a confident cook. There's many areas in my life where I'm not confident, but I'm very confident in the kitchen. So it's just a passion. I've loved it, and I've always loved feeding people. I love the creativity of it. I love making things look pretty. So that's where I get to play. I started the Speedy Vegan. I probably bought the URL, probably 2013 or something, and then I didn't really do anything with it. And then one day after listening to a Rich Roll podcast, and he was talking about Squarespace, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to log on. I'm going to figure this out. Not super techy. And I was like, man, I can do a website. And so I started my little website there. And then, as social media became more prominent, I was like, well, I guess I got to start doing a little bit on Facebook. And then, clicked on that Instagram thing. And, you just sort of like go on this snowball. I've resisted TikTok and things like that. But it's like, I think you kind of have to keep going and evolving with that. But I started, developing recipes around family favorites. My first ebook was called Pardon My Turkey, and that was all our Thanksgiving favorites. So it's a book just packed with everything you need for a Thanksgiving feast. And all sorts of options for like a vegan breakfast the following day. Because we always, at Thanksgiving, people come, they stay over for the weekend. So I was like, well, you got to have, appetizers, main course, desserts, and all the rest, but you've also got to have breakfast. So that's a really fun book. So that was my first ebook. I think I did that in like 2017. And then when the pandemic hit, we all had to sort of pivot in our lives, and I decided to turn my avocation into a vocation and start these online cooking classes. I sort of collaborated with my daughter, and we did a bunch of cooking class series. So we figured this would be helpful to people who are stuck at home, people who wanted to learn how to cook, and it was a way to spread the message of eating whole food, plant-based, vegan meals. So we started off, I think it was the pandemic hit in around April or March, April. And we started our first class in May, and we did like these 3-part series. And all of these series are available on my website at thespeedyvegan.com for sale. You can still buy all these series. And it was a combination of my daughter was living in Boston and I was here in Maryland, and I would do the cooking in my kitchen here. And then every time I needed to change the set to do the next recipe, it would, it was all on Zoom. And so it would flip to my daughter, and she would be doing, part of a PowerPoint presentation, talking about some of the ingredients that were in the meals the food that I just prepped. And so we'd go back and forth having this really fun collaboration together, and then wrapping it up. And we had sort of little Facebook groups around those classes. And then we started the next session, so it was also a sort of travelogue, because it was a way of traveling out of we're all confined to our homes, but we went around the world doing, cooking and culture, cooking, like each lesson, like the first series we did a Mexican class, an Italian class, and I think it was an Asian class. Mm-hmm. And the next one, we did a Mediterranean class. So we took people around the world cooking from their kitchens. So people could either cook along or they could just watch and then, cook the meals later. But that took me into a whole, thing. I had to keep designing, sitting down and writing recipes. I'd always sort of cook things on the fly. I'm not someone to stop and measure, and I'm just more of an intuitive cook. So having to sit down and write these recipes out, design these books, take photographs, and then we developed a YouTube channel to go along with it to show people a little slower. The idea of the Speedy Vegan, I should backtrack a little bit. The idea of the Speedy Vegan was, early on, and when people were just getting going on YouTube, I was watching some videos, and I was like, would take someone about 15 minutes to show people how to make gravy or something. And I was like, man, that is just, it takes 2 minutes. It just doesn't take that long. And I just want to see something really speedy. And my husband said, that's it. You should be the Speedy Vegan, because people are always telling me, like, you would get home from work and suddenly you have dinner on the table in 15 minutes. I'm like, yeah, that's what it takes.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
So that's, it's not because I run fast, because I certainly don't. It's because I cook fast. So that's how the Speedy Vegan sort of came about. So in these cooking class series, I'm moving 1 million miles a minute. So it's probably better for people to watch the series and then take the recipes and go cook them on their own. And then I moved into doing a few classes. And one was actually a Valentine's Day class, which I did last year, and I have it on my site as well. And that was more of a cook along, and that was on the Chibo platform, which is no longer, but the classes are still available. But it's just really fun to get up there and do it. I was super nervous, definitely stepped out of my comfort zone as a 55-year-old woman. I was like, I have no business being up there telling the world how to cook, and there are younger and prettier and smarter people who could do it better than I. And I was like, but this is what I can do, and I'll do it my way. And it was tremendously successful, and it has been a real joy. And I've actually, I realize that when I get behind the camera and I start talking about food, or just as I'm cooking in my kitchen, it's a natural flow. I feel very comfortable, and ideas spring into my head. I never understood that concept of flow. One of the books that I listen to probably once a year is what is it called? The War of Art, or the Art of Art? The War of Art. Stephen Pressfield.
Pressfield, yeah.
Yes, and he talks about. I remember the first time I ever listened to the book, he talked about the flow state of sort of having ideas just sort of run through you, and I didn't understand it until I started doing these cooking series with my daughter. I was like, oh my gosh, it was just, I could just wake up in the middle of the night with just ideas just pouring through me, and I had to quickly put pen to paper, and I was like, this is what it feels like. It's really fun. So anyway, it was really beneficial, and I would never have done that if I hadn't pushed myself and just said yes. I'll do it. I'm going to be brave. So
that's another lesson for all of us, especially, I think, especially for maybe those of us socialized as women in the second half of our lives. Perhaps we start to think, oh, well, I didn't do it. That's for someone younger. That's for someone newer or fresher or something like that. So we talk ourselves out of something that obviously you could have talked yourself out of this, right? And you would not have this experience, and you would not be offering your expertise and your energy and your joy to people. And now we can just log onto your site and and download it.
Yeah, and I'm lucky enough to have a really wonderful daughter who collaborated with me on this. And I think I'd mentioned once before that. Sorry, that's my dog. My daughter is just she's a younger woman. She's grown up in a different generation to me, and there's nothing they can't do. These young women. I mean, they're just so positive, and she's so encouraging. And I would be sort of fumbling over my words sometimes, like, should I say that? Can I say that? And she was sort of being the mom, like, of course you can. I was like, oh, wow. Okay, this is great. I've raised a good one. So she's raising me back, I guess, in this new sort of technology and things that we do differently these days. So
that's beautiful. I think there's nothing better than having that kind of relationship with your kids where you can now collaborate with them and use what's easier for them and the wisdom that you've achieved over this time. And I think that's fantastic. I'd like to know now, so the Speedy Vegan, that's the history of the Speedy Vegan, thespeedyvegan.com. What's going on for you now? I hear that you've been putting together some other things.
I've got a few things have happened recently. I was really lucky to be asked by the Health Science magazine, which is a magazine that's put out by the National Health Association. They have a wonderful quarterly magazine that is just packed with information and interviews with all plant-based doctors and movement specialists. And they always have a featured chef in each edition. So I was asked to be the winter 2022 chef for this magazine. So I got to have 8 of my magazine, I'm holding it in front of me right now, 8 of my recipes in this magazine. And it's just beautiful and so much fun, because the other day I wanted to make one of the soups that I had in the recipe, and I had this magazine in print on my cookbook stand, and there it was, my recipe. So that was really fun. That was really high. And I have a really exciting bundle that just goes live. I guess we're going to have this episode live next week. So it would have happened yesterday. It goes live the 21st, February 21st through March 2nd. And it's a brand new bundle. It's a variety of plant-based doctors and fitness lovers and chefs all sharing recipes and the science on how to safely and healthfully eat this way. There's over 105 different books, ebooks, courses as part of this bundle. And you get all of this for $49. So I'll give you a link for my affiliate link for this. I have one of my class series is in this bundle. The one that I submitted is it's called Plant-Based Potlucks, Picnics, and Prep. So there's one class on parties, one class on potlucks, and one class on prep and lunchbox ideas. So that's the video recordings and all the recipes. And there are, as I say, 105 different submissions by all sorts of different doctors. Some of these are brand new, they've never been offered before, and all of this is available in this bundle, which is probably about $5,000 worth of recipes and books and courses that you can get for $49. And it's just something that I wish that I'd had when I first went vegan. And I constantly look at some of these recipes for ideas, and it's just been really useful to have. So I'm super excited to be part of that. And that's being put together by Chef AJ. So it's called the Ultimate Weight Loss Bundle.
The Ultimate Weight Loss Bundle, put together by Chef AJ, who a lot of the people who listen to this podcast will know. And the links for all of that and Elspeth's affiliate link that she's sharing with us, that's all going to be in the show notes. So nobody has to play this put this in record and re-listen. It'll be in the show notes, so you can just scroll down whatever podcast platform you're listening on, and that will be there. And we'll also share it on Instagram, so that if people notice it again on Instagram, they can look for it.
I will definitely be sharing a lot about it on Instagram too. So.
Oh, good. So we'll be linking to that. That's wonderful. Yeah, Chef AJ's been a dynamo in terms of sharing all kinds of people and processes to try to make this less intimidating. This change, for some people, find it very intimidating. The changeover towards a plant-based, and also this is a very this is weight loss based and health based, right? These recipes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Chef AJ is very much focused on weight loss, that sort of thing. I'm not really, too focused on weight loss, but I'm definitely focused on eating healthfully. And Chef AJ really has done a tremendous amount of good for this whole vegan movement and healthy eating vegan movement. So I really appreciate her, and she's been super encouraging, and so many super people out there have done incredible things. But I've appreciated all the people that she's turned me on to, and all the opportunities that she's given so many of us. So I really appreciate that. And I also have another class in the works I'm putting together. It's sort of a travelogue. We've recently, my family and I were recently in Costa Rica, and while we stay at Airbnbs, because I love to cook, I always end up going to, we go to a few restaurants here and there, and then I always like to come home and recreate some of the recipes that I've made there. And my husband has, says it's like an extended vacation because you bring those recipes home. But I was just thinking about putting together another class, which will include some of the recipes that I've had on recent trips. Not that we've been traveling a lot, but there's certain things that just stand out that I feel like the world needs to know about these, even if they can't get to these restaurants. And maybe one day they will, but at least I can show them my version or my take on some of these. So I'm going to put together maybe a little Costa Rican / Puerto Rican, because that's the other place I've been to recently, class where we can enjoy some of those veganized foods. So
that's marvelous. Because some of us are only ready to be armchair travelers, perhaps for the foreseeable, but we still want to be inspired by these different flavors and different approaches to food. Costa Rica, what is their tagline? Pura vida.
Pura vida, yeah. It's such a wonderful, wonderful place. I absolutely love Costa Rica. We've spent a bunch of time there, and hopefully a whole lot more.
Good. Oh, I feel like the wheels are turning in your brain about how to get back there soon.
Certainly a whole lot warmer and sunnier down there.
Yeah. Well, this has been a cold winter in the northern part of the United States, and you're in Annapolis, right? In the Mid-Atlantic. But even there, it's been chilly, right?
Winter will not let up its grip here, so it's been really cold. I've honestly, I've lived in this country for 32 years, and I finally figured out how to dress right. So I wear 2 coats when I go out. I look like a Michelin man and I'm like, I don't care. I gotta be warm. But it took me a long time to figure out that you need a lot of layers, and you need scarves and hats and gloves. So this farm girl from Zimbabwe is going down.
That reminds me, because one of the things, especially people who are brand new to eating whole food plant-based, will sort of complain, or they'll say, I'm starving, which always makes me laugh, because for me, it was the same thing. I found myself hungry a lot because the foods are less calorically dense. And sometimes we notice this, especially in cold weather, that we may just need to eat more. And so many of us have been socialized to be a little bit afraid of eating a lot of food, that we get kind of freaked out. This is why on Instagram is the only place I really talk a lot about food, but I show my plates. I eat heaping plates of food because I'm eating mostly a lot of it's cooked, but it's mostly low oil or no oil, just plants. And it's you need a lot of it to feel ready to go outside and shovel snow.
Yeah, you do. I grew up, with two brothers and a sister, but with my brothers were big eaters, and also with 4 of us, you had to eat fast to get all the food. So I've always been a big eater. I never miss a meal, and I love being able to eat huge amounts of food. And maintain my weight, maintain my health along, with all of this food. And I eat embarrassingly large salads.
Yeah, and so it's something that when I think if we look at some of the foods that you prepare, Elspeth, we'll see that these are abundant amounts of food. It's a lot of food, a lot of phytonutrients, a lot of color, a lot of fiber and texture. And there's nothing restrictive or sad or unhappy looking about these foods. These are happy foods that you're presenting. I hope everybody's going to tune into to some of your classes, but you can always find Elspeth. And is it the Speedy Vegan on Instagram also?
Yes, the Speedy Vegan on Instagram, the Speedy Vegan on Facebook.
Okay.
Just send me an email at thespeedyvegan@yahoo.com if you want. And my website, yeah.
All right. So is there anything else we should know about what your plans are, what's going on for you this in the quarter coming up? I know you've got the bundle, you've got a new class that you're working on putting together, traveling.
Well, I really I love being in the kitchen. I love creating. I do not love sitting at the computer. So I've got to get that tiger off my back and sit down and write up some of these recipes and get this class together. I've just made a absolutely fabulous soup. In fact, that's going to be my challenge. I'm going to put that recipe up on my website. And then, of course, when you put something on your website, you have to talk about it on Instagram and Facebook, and then you got to make a YouTube video, and then, it goes on and on and on. But anyway, I just made a fantastic mushroom soup with oat groats. It's so hearty and so delicious that I'm going to stay here at the computer and I'm going to write that recipe up and get it out to the world.
All right. Well, that's that challenge. We're gonna be checking in. By the time this comes out, we're going to be looking for it. So on that note, I'm going to leave you to your work, Elspeth. Thespeedyvegan.com. Thank you, Elspeth. Thank you for what you've been contributing. Thank you for all the inspiration. And you guys have to follow Elspeth and see what she's got going for us. And notice in the show notes the links for the affiliate link for the bundle that Elspeth was just talking about. That's a lot of plant-based information, a great gift, perhaps for someone who's new or someone who's maybe in a little bit of a rut, or yourself, if you're looking for some new inspiration for the ultimate weight loss bundle. Ultimate bundle. Okay. That's
ultimate
great.
Weight loss bundle. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Elspeth. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Michele. And thank you for all that you do. I love your podcast.
So what did you think about Elspeth Feldman, the Speedy Vegan? I think Elspeth is such an example of what we talk about here on Vedge Your Best. When you do what once seemed impossible by opting out of meat, dairy, and fish, you really do realize how much more is possible for you in this life. I always say that moving toward a vegan lifestyle is just the beginning, no matter what your age. And I want to make sure that you all have the links so that you can find and follow Elspeth. And you can find her at Facebook and Instagram at The Speedy Vegan. And the website she has is also thespeedyvegan.com. There, as well as in this week's show notes, you'll be able to find more about many of the things she discussed, including the National Health Association and their Health Science magazine, where Elspeth Feldman is featured this quarter. And last but not least, the affiliate link to that exceptional bundle of vegan books and videos Chef AJ has put together, the Ultimate Weight Loss Bundle, which Elspeth has contributed to this year. So I will also put links in the show notes to a couple of things that we discussed that Elspeth mentioned along the way that inspired her, including Gary Yourofsky's video, which you can find on YouTube, called The Most Important Speech You Will Ever Hear. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the documentary Forks Over Knives. In the meantime, follow Elspeth and thespeedyvegan.com. You will be inspired. Talk to you next week. Vedge Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Vedge Your Best team if you would hit subscribe leave us a 5-star review or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.